We continue to grind, 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 but what for? What else are we sacrificing? What else is the beauty of life? And are we just on this treadmill trying to go nowhere fast? And when is enough going to be enough and be able to appreciate the life? Good morning. Today is February 13th. I have the pleasure of speaking to Stefano. Did I say it correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And he is a doctor of physics or a PhD in physics. Can you please pronounce your last name? I would not be able to do it right now.
It's Stefanos Kutsumbis.
I appreciate you being able to explain it. He's an interesting guy. I came across him off of Podmatch, and he grew up in Greece. He traveled Europe, and then he got into the mental health area of being a coach. And when I saw his application on here, I was like, "Wow, this dude just seems like a very interesting guy, and I would love to talk to him." How you doing?
I'm fine, Will. It's a pleasure and an honor being with you.
I appreciate it. So we'll just jump right in. So you were 18 years old when you left your home. Where did you go, and was that before or after you were in the Greek military?
That was before, I grew up in a small town in Greece, and at 18 I went to Athens. It's the biggest city in Greece to study. So I studied math and physics, and then I did my master's and PhD on physics. I was doing research on polymers, on plastics. And this was until 2020, 2017. Yeah, 2017.
So I know you said that you spent a year in the Greek army. Is that a normal thing for the for Greece? Like, to actually every year everybody spends a year in the military, men and women, or just men?
It's mandatory to spend one year more or less after 18, and you can postpone it for some years when you are studying, like I did. So when I joined the army, I was 26 at that point, and or 27, and most of the other guys in my platoon, in my group, they were 18, 19, 20, something like that. It was it was an interesting experience, being back with kids who just went out of school, and me coming up from all this experience in my life and being in the same place and having to rediscover socializing actually with people I didn't knew and who were from very diverse environments actually.
It's yeah, it would be very very different, I would think, because you just got done with your doctorate degree. Now you're back in the same mentality of some people that just never left home at 18 and 19 years old, where they're still full of that piss and vinegar. And how old would you say? About 26, 27?
Yeah, yeah. I realized in retrospect, that is, that I was not mature enough at that point to judge that I was not in the same mental space with the rest of the people that I met in the army in general. I was studying for so many years. I was into my head. And then when I went out and met either the other kids or my supervisors or the people, the how do we call them, the higher ups in the who are working in the army,
Officers
the
or staff
officers.
NCF?
Yeah, the officers. So I didn't realize that the officers were coming from a different mindset, at least not from studying and learning, but from working and making it and being in high alert because something might happen at any point in their lives. So this was a part of what made it actually a hard experience for me being in the army.
Well, they do say that younger kids. So I was 19 when I joined the U.S. Marine Corps. They say our brains are very plastic at this time. They're very malleable, and they can be able to be changed. And I would think a person that had that type of academia, it's like you have delayed so much gratification where when they're trying to push or pull, and coming from a scientific brain, it's like, why are we doing this, and just coming at it from a place of curiosity instead of just instant response.
You know, I did. I wanted to try new things when I got into army, and I voluntarily I went into the special forces of the Greek army, where the training was much harder. We were supposed to learn different tactics and use different tools, different guns, etc., which was pretty exciting. And I did have some nice experiences there. I mean, with helicopters and boats, etc., which was interesting. But in any case, I took a road that was much harder in training and mentally much harder to prepare for. You know, we had to go through long some marathons with our guns and stuff, etc. We had to deprivation of sleep. We have very intense trainings, and the hardest part was not the physical one; it was the mental one. And this is what people there were trying to prepare us for. That okay, if something bad happens, you'll have to take some really bad abuse, and we were trying to learn this. And this was the hardest part at that point for me. It was easier for the 19-year-olds. They could take it much easier. They could bounce back easier. It was very hard for me.
Well, rucking is always a fun time with your buddies. Going on 15-20 kilometer rucksack runs, and then all of a sudden, like where people are doing sleep deprivation, is it's always a really thrilling time. I'm being a little bit facetious when I'm saying this. Uh, yeah, I would actually imagine, like, so it sounds like you went to a thing like Sears, survive, evade, resist, escape type of training.
It was not that heavy as you mentioned it, but it was made to be a light version of that. Yeah, exactly.
So after you left the Greek army, so is it like a just a 1 year contract and then you're done, and then now you could be able to proceed with what you would like to venture into?
Exactly. That's the thing. You're learning how to defend, or to be prepared in case you are ever needed. And it's like that for everyone, every male in Greece. And then you are free to go on with your life and do your jobs, whatever.
Are there, and this is coming from a place of curiosity, are there females inside the Greek military?
There are only some female officers.
Okay,
So only officers. So the basic stuff it's only males.
interesting. So I know as we talked before we jumped on here, like you did a little bit, and you actually did a lot of bit of plastics, then with flame retardant. Then you went into the IT. So tell me about what was the journey like to actually want to become into the mental health field. What was your like? What was your relationship before that you started to want to like work in this field?
Mm. Uh, okay, I started when I was in school. I was very good at maths and physics, and this is why I studied these things. So I was always very technically oriented in my mind, in the way that I'm thinking. And over the years, I realized when I was a student in university, I realized that I lacked some skills in socializing, in meeting other people, in in processing and in processing emotions. And I can tell that I was really unhappy for many years in my life. I mean, school was okay, but I didn't feel good at all. I was depressed for some years. So I started, you know, trying to learn more about this and work on myself. And my path was starting with self development, reading about soft skills, socializing, making friends, learning about dating, and this is where things started to make some sense. And at some point, I said to myself, "Okay, it's just about emotions." I have a very strong I have strong cognitive skills in understanding logic, but I can't process really my emotions. I can't process other people's emotions. I don't understand this language. And at that point, I started uh, really getting into psychology and reading about emotional intelligence, reading about cognitive therapy, learning mindfulness. Mindfulness was a super powerful tool. Really helped me, and I do still practice it. But really helped me, release tension and stress and be able to process information. And over the years, I did some therapy. I learned about positive psychology and took up a lot of rituals into my daily routines. And somehow I feel that I matured a lot as a person. When I was 26, I felt that, yeah, okay, I'm physically 26, but in maturity level, I feel like 15 or 16. And working on my emotions and understanding myself and understanding other people and socializing really helped me mature and get some confidence in my life and in how I feel when I speak to other people, so I can come from meet other people as an equal and not as a student, because I was always a student.
When you talk about looking at the world in a logic brain, like when my understanding, because I used to love math growing up, and I used to see things as just very linear, very logical. And then all of a sudden, hold on a second, you're talking about these things that are extremely hard to define and describe. And they are not so like, I'm feeling sad. Well, sad is a spectrum. Like, I'm not understanding this. And then, or I'm feeling angry. It's like, what is the undercovering emotion behind it? And growing up the way I did, anger started to become the one of the biggest emotion drivers where people were like, hey, I'm feeling happy. Well, anger just seems a lot more comfortable. I'm feeling sad. Anger looks a little bit more comfortable. What your experience is, did you ever find that with your brain of like one emotion was just trying to jump into control?
My emotion that tries to jump into control is sadness, actually. So it's like my brain is telling me, okay, you can't do it. Stay back and retreat back to yourself and stay quiet. This is my go-to emotion. And I know there is also a lot of anger, but growing up, I didn't know how to express anger, actually. So it came out as passive aggressiveness, and this led back to sadness again, because I couldn't express it. I would mute it, and then I would be left with nothing to do but being sad. It's funny, and I'm always telling it when I'm speaking to friends or clients, that my go-to emotion when I'm driving my car or my bike and someone cuts me off in the street is, being super angry, and I'm having all these images of, of fighting, of physically fighting. I will never do it because I don't think that I will go to that extent. But it's super strange and interesting that my go-to behavior when something unfair is happening to me, like someone cutting me off, something very small, is fighting. So there is something that's unprocessed there. It still leads me to those paths.
So, like when you talk about cutting it off, so here in like you've heard a little bit about California or New York where the drivers are a little bit crazy. It's what I wonder is like, has the mindfulness helped you with lowering down that emotional cup? Like I think about when we don't have our emotions processed, it's like a full cup. And then anything else is just like the tipping point to it. It's the pour over point. And I find mindfulness is kind of like what you're doing is you're pouring it out, and then you're lowering that emotional, like the emotions that are stored, so you have a little bit more of an emotional threshold. So when I think about with people cutting me off when I was not taking care of it, I'm just curious about your perspective on this. Is I would take it personal. I would take whatever actions that they were doing, but I know if I was to do it to them, my thoughts would be like, I need to be somewhere, or this is a sense of urgency. When you started doing your mindfulness, did you ever actually start to look at it like maybe they're just, I'm totally irrelevant to them and they have something else going on?
Um, hmm. You know, doing the mindfulness really helps me pick up the signs and be ready for that. So I guess that I was always angry when something like that was happening, but I wouldn't be able to understand it at all. I was not getting the physical signs of anger. I would feel them, but I couldn't explain them. So the first step with mindfulness was that it helped me understand the physical signs and the thoughts that were coming there. And then the next step for me personally is that, okay, I'm having this, I told you that I'm having some very vivid images of, of fighting. And I'm able to watch them and say, okay, why I'm having such a reaction in something that minor? And then it's coming down as curiosity because I'm getting into this habit of looking at the situation. And most of the time, it's like you said, if you look at the other person, they are so much into their own minds, they never noticed you. And I know that if I get into a fight with someone who I just met once, they won't learn anything, and I won't get anything out of that in any case. So it's a lose-lose situation in any case. So yes, indeed, with mindfulness, I was able to get out of the loop of anger and get into the why is this happening and why I'm having those thoughts right now. And also take a step back and notice that the other person, they never looked into me. They never cared. They were into their own mind at that point. I wasn't there for them. So yeah.
That's something I found a long time ago is because it's hard. It's hard to actually put ourselves in their shoes, and it's hard for them to put themselves in our shoes. It's become a very personal thing to us, and then being able to move forward. Um, I know you say you struggled with depression. What were some of the things that has helped you out over the years with depression, and how do you actually use depression today as a sign?
Okay, yeah, I was suffering from depression, and at that point, it was not something that I knew, and I didn't have any professional help at that point, and I never knew actually at that point that I needed or some professional help would help me. But I did have a lot of self-harm thoughts at that point. And later through reading, I learned that having self-harm thoughts is a symptom of depression. Actually, this is a sign that you are depressed, and psychiatrists and psychologists and therapists know that, and they treat it that way. So depression has cycles, and it can take from 3 to 6 months to maybe 9 months, and then you relapse. And I was in some of these cycles. Some were deeper, some were longer, but more or less, I would relapse at some point on my own. And when I went to therapy, I went with a different uh, request for my therapist. It was, to be more comfortable with myself and to feel all the goods that are happening in my life, to feel them also inside me. But while I was there, I learned a lot about how to process thoughts and emotions. And I think this is why nowadays I'm feeling better, because I learned some skills how to process the thoughts, find my patterns, and cognitive behavioral therapy (CBT) was really helpful there. Find my patterns and learn to recognize them real time, so I won't get into bad loops. And nowadays, I have some good days, I have some bad days, but somehow I learned to take care of how I feel, so I won't slip much deeper into those, into what can be a really long cycle of depression, actually.
It's interesting. Like I know you said kind of before it will creep out or creep up sometimes, and like what kind of signs do you have when it starts to come up now or reemerge?
I have a trauma sign, and this is having self-harm thoughts. So when I'm having some self-harm thought out of nowhere, for me, it's a sign at that point that, okay, my past traumas somehow were again reinitiated, or something pressed a button into me. And when that happens, I've learned to take some steps back and some space from what is triggering my trauma. And so this is one thing. And the other thing is that we all have good and bad days, but at some points I realized that for the last 5 or 10 days my mood is super low, and I can't find exactly what is the reason behind that. But I know that I'm complaining more, I'm not finding satisfaction in things that I still do, and I'm always ruminating, ruminating about things that happened, and I'm thinking again and again and again on the same thing. And this is the sign that, okay, I should take care a bit of my mental health at this point. If I would make an analogy, I would say that with physical health, I would say, okay, when my back starts to hurt, I know that I haven't exercised for a couple of weeks, and I'm saying, okay, let's go back to the gym because my back is hurting now. And I learned to recognize it the same way with my mental health, that when my soul hurts, when I'm ruminating a lot, or when I'm having low mood for a lot of days, I learned to recognize that, okay, let's go back to the mental gym. And for me, it's journaling, and it's mindfulness, and it's uh, positive habits.
I appreciate that you're giving that explanation because even an analogy is a lot of times we don't realize these warning signs, and it's when these warning signs come up, they're kind of a blessing, even though that they bring on these negative things of like, oh my god, this is happening again. And it's like you knowing it's not a runaway train, but what it is, it's just, hey, here's a sign, please look, this is what's going on. You've been here before, welcome back, but please turn around, this is not an area that you want to go back to.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly that.
So, when you decide to get into this field of being a coach and helping out men, what have you learned about yourself doing this way? And what have you also saw similarities between the men that you've been helping?
It's very, very interesting because I'm always hearing a lot of different stories from people, and I'm getting all these perspectives. So, my diversity, I'm accepting more diversities, and I'm accepting that people are coming from different backgrounds and have different problems. And I couldn't ever have all these experiences because these are collective experiences. So I'm getting a lot more empathetic, and a lot more understanding, and a lot more respecting actually for what people have been doing with their lives, because there are a lot of men out there that are really impressive. It's really impressive what they have accomplished with their lives. No one will recognize you. No one will recognize you for what you are doing because everyone is doing something. but I learned to respect a lot people for their accomplishments, because even when they are struggling, they are still working. One very nice aspect of masculinity is that we are go-getters. We're still trying. We never give up. We are all the men I'm recognizing still have ways of finding motives from them for themselves and self motivation and keep going. So this is something that I'm taking for myself. What I'm getting as a motive or as a pattern from the people and the men I'm speaking to, there's a lot of loneliness out there, and the younger people don't care that much about that. Men who are at their 20s or early 30s, maybe they don't care about that. But after that, it hits a lot harder as you grow up. Even men who are single and maybe they don't care to date or to get married or to whatever, they still do care to have a circle of people who can listen to them, actually, to have friends. So loneliness is a key thing that I'm seeing, and this is actually why people are coming to me, why people are coming to the men's groups that I'm doing, because they want to listen to other people and to get known.
One of the words that I keeps coming to my mind is witness. Witness through the struggle, witness through the power, and being witnessed is coming without judgment. It's coming with that place of, hey, it's okay. It's okay to sit there in that pain. It's okay that you've been carrying this log this long. And it's okay for you to drop it now. It doesn't mean the log defines you, but it's just part of who you are. It doesn't mean that that's who everything you are.
Exactly, yeah.
The so what, like I was looking through the questions that you said that you're always ready to answer. So the interesting one to me was actually the burnout. It was sorry. How is modern masculinity contributing to stress, burnout, and emotional disconnection in men?
Yeah, there is this culture, and I think it's global now. It's this side culture, side hustle culture. You need to have one job, and then in your free time have a second job, and then maybe have a side hustle, and work 24/7 all around the clock. And this is the only way that you are gonna break free from. I don't know from what, but this is the only way that you are gonna break free and make it and be important and be successful. So we have a culture that pushes us to work 24/7 with zero satisfaction in what we're doing. We don't care. There's a lot of actually um, a lot of self-help books and videos, etc., that they are telling you that it doesn't matter if you don't like your job, just keep doing it as a chore until you make it. And this is really a recipe for burnout. Being in prolonged periods of stress for whatever reason with no rest, actually. No one values rest. And scientifically, we know that stress can be helpful, and it really helps. You were in the army, you need to be stressed where you are in a combat. If you are an athlete, you need to be stressed when you are training or when you are competing. Stress helps you at that point. And when we were back in the jungles, i- when we saw a tiger tooth or something, you needed to be stressed at that point and run for your life. So stress is helpful, but so is rest. And we need equal periods of rest after periods of being stressed. This is something that we don't give to ourselves. We don't allow ourselves to rest. There is a lot about sleep. We think that okay, sleep is lost time. We should be learning or working or socializing or doing something that's important or productive with our time instead of sleeping. So a lot of people are depriving themselves from sleep, which is actually crucial for for your body, for your chronic illnesses, for fatigue, for pains, and it's also very important for our brains, for memory and for neuroplasticity to develop. So we have a culture of being always close to burnout, climbing up the stress ladder and pushing ourselves to the edge of diminishing returns, because we know that if we overdo it, there are some diminishing returns and we won't get much out of our job. But we are always there on that cliff of stress, and we're pushing our limits and expect to make it like this. And this is something that doesn't lead to short-term happiness. It doesn't lead to long-term happiness, and actually if you overdo it, it doesn't lead to productivity actually. So you lose all the things that you were trying for. And this is part, of what we think a man is: someone who keeps working, keep pushing no matter what, never reflects, or always keep pushing.
While you were talking, the image of a magazine that holds rounds in it, if you keep a magazine under tension, so when I was in the Marines, we had 30 round magazines. We put three tracers on top, stack it full of like 22 regular ball rounds, and then stack it with another one more tracer, actually two more tracers at the bottom. What it was, it's when it's underneath that tension, and if you don't pull it out, you don't re-stretch out the spring, what happens is that that thing just stops being able to bounce back, and that's the diminishing returns. With guys and with people in society, and you talk about the side hustle culture, it's like we're going to continue to grind, but what for? What else are we sacrificing? What else is the beauty of life? And are we just on this treadmill trying to go nowhere fast? And when is enough going to be enough and be able to appreciate the life?
This past year I have been working a lot of myself on myself to build some gratitude practices in my practice. And what we know is that you can live in a palace or you can live in a hut and still be uh, in the same levels of happiness. It hasn't to do with external things, how happy you are. So one thing that we need, and I try to keep asking myself, is that okay, if I'm not happy with the things that I already have in my life, how do I expect to be happier when I just get the next goal? And I have enough experience in my life now to say that okay, I did try to hit the next goal, and when I got to that one, I was not happy. I wanted to do a bit more and a bit more, and this is really a treadmill, like you said, and you never get to the top. So if we don't learn to be grateful for what we have today and be happy with what we have today, how more things will make us happier? It never happens. And I'm not telling this philosophically. I'm telling this out of my experience with trying to get more things and making it, and still not finding uh, what I was looking for. There's the motive behind why are we trying to why are we having families, why are working for our families, why are we making more money, or why are we making success and fortunes and legacies. And most of the time the answer is to be secure, to feel happy for ourselves and our families. So if what we are doing is not leading there, why keep doing more of the same?
Well, I've actually been pondering this question, and probably about 4 months ago, maybe 7 months ago, between that time, 7 and 4 months ago, I was like, I actually have been enjoying the grind, which is actually weird to say. And when I started to reshape that narrative, I'm like, if I didn't like it, I wouldn't be doing continuously doing this. But the other question that has come to my mind is, when am I willing to let go of these past identities that no longer serve me and choose to try a different character or a different role in my story? And that can sound funny, but it's like, if if I'm all I'd known is to actually work out, or I'm only known to go be a runner or be a reader, am I actually developing my personality during the whole time that I'm experiencing it? And am I also being able to show up as a friend or a family member in my purest form? So it's interesting that we'll just get into this treadmill of life, or this belief system where it's the toxic capitalistic perspective of, if you work really really hard you'll have these things, if you work really really hard you have these things, and it'll make you happy. And but the truth is, like you said, you can live in a castle and you could be a miserable person, you could live in a hut and you could be super happy. But I notice the happiest time for me is when I'm going out exploring. When I put my feet in the grass, I was in a rainforest and I started touching the moss on the tree. And I'm like thinking about, don't touch things, don't touch it. I'm like, I'm just going to touch it. Or I just start petting the bark. And it brings me back to this child. And when I think about that, it's like, what is happiness to me? And to me, not to society, not to what I've been fed. And I believe that is also a part of what creates this depression, creates this mental health issue, because we are not self exploring as much as we probably should.
Yeah, this moment that you described, being in the forest and exploring, th- this is this is a green flag. It's not the red flag. It's the opposite. We do have these exceptional moments and these aha moments where we are feeling something and something is happening and something good is happening, and then we tend to forget them and not do them anymore. So if in your case that this thing gave you some kind of meaning and some kind of spiritual experience, and something interest, and you liked it, we don't care. And this is what I learned from positive psychology. Actually, we don't care why this worked for you, but it somehow it helped you. And if you keep doing it, maybe you can experience more good moments in your life. And it doesn't have to be approved by me, by society, by the capitalist world. We don't care as long as it helps you. Imagine if in front of us was a person who was severely depressed, and he was telling us, okay, I have this moment when I'm going fishing and I love it and I'm relaxed at that point. We'll never advise him to go to work, or or to go to do something else. Advise him to fish, go for fishing more, since this is working for you and this is helping you. Because when we are looking at other people and when we're looking at other people to help them, we're having this kind of compassion and we want them to be good, and we are giving them the right advice. Okay, do something that is good for you. But we rarely do that for ourselves, and we tend to miss those things that make us feel good, and we forget. And I know from my experience as well that I've done a lot of different things in my life that I did enjoy at that point, but I didn't pursue. I haven't learned to pursue good things, and I have to keep exploring and keep learning to pursue things that make me happy today, because I know that if I don't, then I'll be back in the same loop.
Yeah, it was actually interesting. You said fisherman. So I got a quick story for you, and you probably have heard this one. So there's this guy. He's a great fisherman. He has a small boat. He brings back fish to the market. He sells it. His friend is a businessman. He says, "Hey, why not actually get a bigger boat?" He said, "No." He said, "I just enjoy fishing." And then a week later, his buddy goes back to him and says, "Hey, man, why don't you really think about getting that boat? We can get the capital." He said, "Well, I want to explain it to you." He said, "Well, we'll get these boats. I have to manage a crew. We have to be able to make our numbers. Then we're selling all this stuff. And then on my leisure time, I can go fishing for fun. Why the hell am I going to make a system that takes away my happiness? And it's like the Japanese have this word is called ikigai. And are you familiar with it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And when you think about the four pillars of what does the world want from you, what are you good at, how can you make money, and what do you enjoy, they're not even looking at retirement. They're just looking at actually having a life, not even a happy life, a life of all the mixed emotions, which is a beautiful thing.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
So, what happens inside men's groups?
Okay. When we are setting up a group, there are some ground rules. There are some ground rules to give some structure to the conversation. The ground rules are that, okay, we respect each other, we listen to other people without thinking up of what we're gonna reply next. It's okay to ask questions to other men, but you are not allowed to give advice. Okay, so we treat each one as an adult, actually, not giving them advice, but respecting them and believing that each one of us have enough, um, enough. He's clever enough to make decisions for his own life, and we allow people to share. So most of the days start with questions such as, "Okay, what has been going, what were the high points and the low points of your past week," and people are able there to start sharing about what has been troubling them, and they are given the space to really uh, to really open up, and they are pushed actually to speak a bit more about what has been going on with their lives, without being told what they should do. So this is a really a cathartic experience, for someone to have the space to speak his mind, because most of the time when we're speaking, even with our friends, we don't have enough space because we are sharing news and we want to be super efficient and fast and move to the next thing. So the first thing that is happening is that people are giving space. And the next thing that is going on is that people are learning through other people's experiences. I haven't been married. I'm engaged, but I'm meeting people who have been through divorces, and they have children. And this is a learning experience even for me facilitating this. And you get the opportunity to have some experiences, some diverse experiences that you wouldn't have in your life, or that you didn't have at this point yet. And you are prepared, and you know now that, okay, things can be different later in your life. The third thing that is happening when you are just listening to other people's stories is that you are getting some perspective for your own life. And you have surely heard of thought experiments, like, okay, imagine the day that you will be dead. Will this thing matter today? Or imagine that it's 10 years from now. Will this thing, right? Or zoom out and think of the universe, and then zoom in to your city and to this situation. Does this seem important? And people tend to have such kind of experiences, because when you're hearing, Stefanos or Will uh, tell their stories, you zoom out from your problems, and you see that, okay, my problems are tough for me at this point, but I'm suffering and other people are suffering as well. So this is a human experience, and men start giving themselves the permission to experience bad emotions without having either to lock them out, block them, or have to do something about them at this point.
Yeah, it goes back to being witnessed again. I love that. I love the ground rules. It's a way to keep people being able to be vulnerable without judgment. And it's something I might adopt with some of the people I speak with. I appreciate it. I'm sorry, Stefano. I'm going to possibly be borrowing it a little bit. It's a great idea. So I know I said that we'll speak for about an hour, and I know we're coming up on time. It's about 14 minutes. And curious, how could people find you? And what are some of the things that they will be able to benefit from your services?
I have a website. This is the main way for people to find me. I am on the Meetup app, and I'm having the men's groups there. They're organized through there. I have on my website also a guide. It's a free PDF that people can find, and there are some. I'm calling it 5 ways to start feeling happier today without having to quit your job. And there are 5 different tools that can really jumpstart how you're feeling, and they are like, okay, practice mindfulness that we were saying, or start working out, because we know that working out is a form of antidepressant actually.
Hmm.
So this is where people can find me. In my work, my what I'm trying to do is make people feel happier, and feel happier where they are today, and meet them in their lives where they are today, and try to find what room is there in their lives to feel better. No, not to be the best version of themselves, to be super happy or super hyped all the time, but start feeling a bit better with themselves, and feel really, really content with their lives and what they've accomplished. And from all the men that I meet, I know that they have accomplished a lot, and this is what I'm helping them with. There are some tools that we're starting to work with, and they are about developing self-insight and learning our strengths, and what has been working so far, okay, and then we find what hasn't been working well and what steps we can take. So it's very practical, actually. There is people are having to do some homework. We talk, we have a lot of feedback, and from week to week, people do really see changes in their mindset, in their perspective, and in their mood.
So, do you have a Facebook page that you put stuff on? Do you have an Instagram? Do you have? I know you said Meetup. Is the meetup only local to Greece, or can other people get on there and attend virtually?
The meetup is open it's in English, it's open, and people can come and meet up virtually, actually. I do have my newsletter. I do have an Instagram page, but I'm not that active. I'm trying in taking care of myself and my sanity to somehow put some boundaries in how I use social media, and I think that it takes a lot of energy to have a good social media profile, and at this point, I'm not ready to do that.
Hey, that's very commendable. A lot of people like to try to build the cart while they're driving it. I'm one of those people. I'm trying to learn how to pivot. And on top of it, it definitely leads to burnout and compassion fatigue.
There is something strange with social media that we didn't have 20 years ago. You know, 20 years ago, someone who was working on the radio, or who was working on the TV show, they would go to work in the morning, work with some other people there, and then go home. But this is not something that someone who creates content for TikTok or Instagram or Facebook can do. People who create content are working 24/7, actually, because everything that you see can be a nice story, for example, for your viewers. And for me, this is the definition of burnout. And it's the same with, being a viewer. 20 years ago, I would, go through the different channels on the television, and at some point, no one will come up and I will close it because I was bored. This is not happening today when, I'm grabbing my phone. It's never over. I'm always there's something interesting. I can never close it. So there are no uh, those natural rhythms that we have in our lives of waking up, working, going home. They do not apply to modern social media, and this is why we're having a problem with them. So many addictions and so much burnout actually.
Yeah, that's a good reminder right there of actually creating that disconnect and creating that time between it. I appreciate that. What kind of words of wisdom would you give to anybody that is listening to this or anybody that might be struggling? So, to give you a heads up, it's about 50-50 of the audience are men and the other 50 are women.
Mhm. Okay, my I will say something that I've learned from my teacher on positive psychology, Tal Belsahar, and he's always mentioning that happiness is the ultimate currency of our lives. It's not dollars, it's not euro, it's happiness. This is why we're struggling. This is what we should be struggling towards to being our happier versions. We don't have that much in ourselves as a value. Certainly not as men. I think that neither women do have this. So having this as a reminder in our lives, it can help us take some decisions for why are we doing things, why are we're trying, why are we speaking even at this point.
Well, it's beautifully said. It's why, and why. It's more of really taking what is the tax on what we're doing before we're doing it. And instead of just doing the energy and then having the gambler's fallacy of we just did this so that we have to keep doing it for the buy-in. Stefano, you're a very wise man, and I really do appreciate the time that you gave to me today. Anything else that you would like to say, or
No, well, that was be all. I really love also the work that you are doing with the veterans and really, really respect that.
thank you, sir?